we are a hospitality industry. People go on trips because they remember the experience, right? And at the end of the day, you can't automate somebody's feelings on a experience. You can't like there's like everybody has this question about AI, like how do we make this easy and hands off and what do we do? And there's a bunch of things you can automate and you absolutely should, but it's so that your team can focus on providing an experience for these guests. And that's so important that the guest experience is focused and it's there.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the STR Investing Podcast. I am your co-host Mark Lumpkin, and like always, we bring you guys some of the coolest people in the short-term rental industry every Friday. This week, we did not disappoint. I am super excited to talk with Amber Knight. She's from Booking Clouds, and we're going to talk about like the future of the short-term rental industry and how you can better leverage the guest experience and control for your property to get more bookings, make more money. Amber, would you say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody. I'm Amber Knight. Really excited to be here. You know, I've been in the short-term rental space and vacation rental space for a long time, built my career doing basically bringing new technology and new ideas to the short-term rental industry. You know, it's like starting off with Vacasa really early on, building out corporate development, kind of moving through talking about RevPAR, building innovation of like revenue management tools and tricks. And now I'm launching Bookings Cloud, which is where we are leveraging a lot of the algorithms and technology and AI in Meta and in Google to increase visibility for local short-term rental operators and make sure that that properties get seen by the right people so that you can optimize your, occupancy and your ADR.
Cool. I love it. Can we start with like your history with Vacasa, if you don't mind? We don't have to talk about this forever, but obviously that's like a household name. And a lot of people listening in will be like, yeah, I know who Vacasa is. They're the biggest property manager. What did you learn from working with them? How long were you there? What was kind of the experience like? And what was the big takeaways from working with the giant?
Yeah, absolutely. This was before it was a giant, is what I would say. They were only in Oregon at this point. And I came on to kind of expand the Western market. And I knew some about short-term rentals, just like my dad has in cabins, that type of thing. And really wanted the opportunity to work at a startup and do a bunch of things. And so because like when we got going, like there was a little bit, like I was doing everything from scratch. So really learned how to identify the properties. How do we use data to identify the right properties on the like property tax reports and things like that. Understand what they look like, how to get them furnished, how to price them, the content, optimizing listings. So really got to do everything from the ground up. And then as we started getting going, there's opportunities for acquisitions of like, here are people who've been running a business for 10 years, 15 years. They're ready to retire. They want to move on to the next thing or they need a little more help. So then how do you use data to find the right price, that acquisition properly, and then also how do you optimize the performance of these properties, right? And so we were able to see something like, it was like a 27% increase in the revenue of the properties on average, like over a year of the properties that came on with us. So it was really like making that a machine, right? How do you find something new? How do you scale it? Use that opportunity and move forward. So it was learned a lot about scaling a business, right? And that you need systems and processes, and you cannot power through it as one person. So working with teams and building teams was a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our listeners are individual operators that have bought a couple properties and are starting to scale. And that's often the question is like, okay, I can do one or two on my own or three or four piecemeal together. But at a certain point, very quickly, all those kind of duct tape together systems start to break and fail on you. And so having those kind of like ironclad processes, what were really like some of the workflows or some of the takeaways? What were some of the processes that you built that helped you guys scale? What were some of the key pieces that had to be built, and how did you build?
One of the things that I would say is a lot of times when we're building early on, we just do things in our head and we're kind of using our intuition to figure out what's next. Right? Like, okay, this is how we need to handle this property. Here's what the property needs to look like. Like I'll know it when I see it, when a clean property's clean, right? Well, you can't teach somebody else what a clean property looks like by that. You have to kind of define it, right? So one of the biggest things that we really did was kind of start to define each stage of a process, try to like break it down into like identify it, define it, and then how does, especially when you're bringing in a bunch of new properties, this is where things break, right? You lose revenue when you scale really fast. And so really, like, if you can just use the words to say, okay, we need to change how we're collecting money for these properties to something else. If you don't even know that because you haven't asked the question, because you haven't defined that at this stage is when we deal with the money, you can't fix it, right? So it's this kind of combination of just giving every stage of your business, every stage of your client interaction a name, and defining what happens at that stage and what happens to get to the next gate, right? And then that way you can talk through it and you can hand it off to somebody else. And you can say, like when somebody's completely paid, then they're at the next gate of getting ready for check-in. And that's something else. And again, it's been a long time since I've been like on the ground in vacation rentals, but that's functionally like, you have to define every stage. You have to define the entry gate and the exit gate. And if you can do that across the board and you can talk about that with other people, then you're all talking about the same thing in the same way. And that communication is so important.
It's a great answer. It was a curveball at you. I was curious how you were going to answer that one, but it's perfect. Yeah, you've got to break it down, define it. I think we think about it more like buckets, like where's this client at in their journey? What's the bucket? Who's in charge of this? How do they get in there? How do they get on to the next one? And what happens while they're in there? So I love that. Really getting granular and breaking it down is going to be the key to helping figure out that client journey and making sure that everybody's happy and everybody gets paid and you have a profitable business. So then you go through, work with a couple other short-term rental industry companies because you've been in the game for a while, you've got that experience. Were your next kind of journeys doing the same type of thing, or did you go and branch out and do different stuff in the space, or were you mostly with the property management space?
No, I moved to software, and I moved to software because I'm going, just to be perfectly honest, launching software and building like go-to-market plans for me, I found easier than a lot of the other things in the late nights and the holidays that short-term rental operators run with. So just kind of understanding that and saying, okay, how do I bring innovation to this industry at scale, right? If we look at where hotels are, of their brand standards, hotel, like they're operating their websites, everything else, like we have a long way to go in this industry to develop and mature. And what's the most effective way to do that? What's the most effective way to bring innovation to local operators? And software is a really strong way to do that. And so how do you talk about revenue management, pricing strategies, right? Bringing that through. How do, at Inhabit, working with at LiveRes, running that. How do you change what the old school teams are doing and bring that forward into, talking about optimizing your rates, optimizing your properties, optimizing your listings to maximize the revenue for the inventory you already have.
Was that a nice change of pace going to software from property management? You said no weekends, no holidays, no Christmas.
No, like required weekends, right? Like where you're not having, like your clients are different and you're supporting something different. So it was, my first like Labor Day weekend where I wasn't like packed was a real, like it was an interesting thing. It was a mindset shift, right? And so, it's fun. It's exciting. It's a different kind of exciting because you don't get that like great guest stay where you get to have that a feeling of accomplishment after a guest had a great stay and gave you a great review. So it's maybe less immediate feedback, but also I find it fun.
For sure. I always think that the vacation rental industry, the short-term rental industry is so unique because it's really this crossroad where travel meets tech meets real estate meets hospitality, and it's like all these it's a combination of multiple different industries. You've got to have the right piece of real estate in the right location. That's very much real estate. You got to have the hospitality piece and the taking care of people, making them the warm fuzzy feeling. That's that hospitality piece, and you just kind of go through all these different elements that make up this industry. And I think a lot of people have a disadvantage to where they are thinking one mind, right? They're like, I'm a real estate developer, and so I'm gonna go crush it in short-term rentals because I know so much about real estate. And it's like, yeah, but you're missing the other pieces, the other elements to this industry. And so that was really cool that you got to see different sides of the industry, and I'm sure that led you to what you're doing now, which is tech, and you're using your background experience. So Bookings Cloud, tell us what it is. How did it come about? What have you been doing? We'd just love to hear about it.
Yeah, functionally, Bookings Cloud solves that issue of adding, like, how do we add visibility to our properties without just being on an OTA, right? How do we get more eyeballs on our properties at the time when guests are wanting to book? And so essentially what we've done is we're using all the information and data available available on the internet, available on Meta and Google to really help the algorithms essentially learn how to read your portfolio and learn how to read your website to send you more people who want to book your properties. And we use that with automated ads. So we'll pull all your data in from your PMS, from Google Analytics, from everywhere, and then we will automatically create ads for you. So you're not manually creating ads, the audiences, everything else, to optimize all of it, to just drive more eyeballs to your properties.
I love that. Is it a lot of retargeting previous clients? Is it just going after that same type of client demographic that booked with you before? How do you guys figure out who's the client to target?
What we've learned is that Meta, and by Meta I mean Facebook and Instagram specifically, and because it's the lowest hanging fruit for vacation rentals, they know who to target better than any marketer or any data piece, prior guest list, anything like audience we could build. So essentially we went to Meta because we do have pre-existing relationships with Meta, and we talked to them and said, hey, what data do you need to optimize sending guests and prospects to these properties? And they said, okay, we need amenity data, right? We need pricing data. Like, what is this property priced at? So we're sending a $5,000 night property to somebody who's looking for that, right? We're sending a property with a pool to somebody who's looking for that. Also, we need all your photos so that we're putting the right photo in front of somebody so we can optimize what that looks like. And really just kind of giving Meta the tools it needs to be able to cook, essentially. And then, and then on top of that, because it's it's a two-way connection from your website, especially back to Meta. So we will kind of optimize for who's going to actually book one of your properties. And so Meta will get more information. So the longer it works, the more it's able to optimize the people who will go to your website and will actually book your properties.
Okay, I've got lots of questions, but the first one is very much a self-promotion if you answer this the way I think you are, which is do very nicely designed and amenitized, very unique stay properties advertise and direct book better?
100%. And not only does it help you that property book better, it helps the entire portfolio book better. So like we have this company in Orlando, right? Probably 50 properties and that we've been working with. They have one property that's like, Disney World dream, right? It's got the mini golf course. It's got everything else. It got probably like 25,000 views in a month, like people seeing the ad, going to the website. But it also, the other side of it is it increased bookings across the whole portfolio because people want to look at that property and it's kind of a little bit of a leader property, but it also, then people want to go book your very like strong 4-bedroom house is maybe a fifth of the price, right? That's in the same neighborhood, that's in the same location that they're working through. So we actually saw that like that property that had a ton of amenities, it drove a bunch of traffic to the website. It drove its own bookings. It drove the portfolio's bookings. So much so that like 2 months in, the operator wanted to take that property out, like block it totally. Because they're like, oh, we don't need any more traffic to this website. We're going to book it, or to this property specifically. Bookings across the portfolio dropped 21% in that month. So we brought it back on. So even having like one or a couple of those properties that brings people who want to book your other properties to your website, it improves the whole portfolio.
That's crazy. I never thought about that, the additional bookings you get on your other properties. But yeah, it's very much like it's just like any marketing company or any industry that advertises your best possible product, right? We see it in the hospitality industry all the time. You see a hotel advertising that penthouse suite, or you see a cruise ship advertise the crazy cool bedroom that is not even available for 5 years, but you go check out the cruise and you're like, oh, this is still really cool. I think I'll book a different room just because that one's not available. It doesn't mean I don't still want to go on this vacation. So it's really, really cool. I'd love to dive. There's a lot I want to unpack, but I do want to jump into, you guys are doing direct ads. Are people needing, or is it a requirement that they have their own direct booking website do they go together in tandem?
We are, I want to say yes, but we're experimenting with sending traffic directly to Airbnb.
Okay.
The issue is, do people want to pay extra to drive more traffic to Airbnb and then pay Airbnb fees? Most people want to send the traffic to their website to book directly on their website. Now, that being said, I'm going to say between 20 and 40% of the time across all portfolios, people will go to the website, look at the property, and then go book on an OTA. So that's actually pretty common too. So it's kind of even when you're just sending them to your website, they're going to book. If a guest behavior is standard, they're used to booking on Airbnb, they're still going to book on Airbnb, but they'll stop by your website first. And it differentiates your property from everybody else's, and they're able to look at you based on service and brand and amenities, and not just on price.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you need like a strong social media presence in order to be successful in there? Because I see a lot of people starting their first or second property, and they're just like, I have a Facebook page and I've got 5 followers. 2 of them are my mom and my grandma.
No, because we're not in. So I'm going to say there's 3 different kinds of advertising on social, right? There's brand marketing, which is like, hey, we SoCo Vacation Rentals exists, and come like and engage with the page. Then there's going to be boosting a post, right? Which is like going to be $50-$100. They're liking and engaging with the page, right? This is targeted ads. We have 8 different ad types that we show so that we're getting people where they are. And when they click on that link, they're going to your website, and they're going directly to that property page on your website. So they see everything they need to see to book that page. So you don't even you can have it to track the ads and to see what that looks like, but it's absolutely not necessary. It's one of the things it helps to engage, because people will ask questions on the ads. And if it's connected to your property page, or to your Facebook page, then you can answer those questions, and that shows engagement. And they start working through that. The real thing is, I think it probably optimizes at when you have about 15 properties. If you're under 15 properties and you own them, especially, it works. It doesn't, your conversion rates are going to be a lot more on Airbnb than on a website.
Do you notice that there's seasonality behind this too? Like if I'm advertising my property, is there an optimal time to advertise? Is it during the busy season? Is it during the shoulder season? Does it even matter? How do you think about that?
I love this question, because one of the things that we're running into is that most people look at when they earn their revenue. They don't really think about when they get the booking, right? When they secure their revenue for the future. And so you want to look through not how much revenue did I make last month, but how many new bookings did I get on the books? And how many more bookings was it than this time last year? Looking to advertise for next month, you want to think am I getting 15% of my bookings in the month of May for the year? And if I am, every incremental booking is going to help me increase the amount of revenue I have. So seasonality really does make a difference, because you need people to be able to see the ads in order to fully optimize that, right? If you don't have enough people who are looking at these ads with high intent, you're gonna get people who are looking, but not necessarily gonna book.
I got you. Come to the ski town in August and if you're running that ad, you might get more eyes, but you're gonna have a much lower conversion, because those people are much less likely to even want to go do that.
Yeah, it's much more of an awareness campaign.
You might get a lot of people to look at it and hate you and comment, but that doesn't mean you're gonna sell a lot of steaks.
Now, that being said, there's maybe there's 1,000 people in a month, and there's normally 10,000 people in a month looking to go stay in your market that are looking for a property like yours. Do you want to still get in front of the 1,000 people, even though it's a tenth of what there normally is? So, every booking matters.
I love that. So you mentioned something that sparked my interest earlier that I think is really intriguing. I can't wait to hear you answer this question. But you said that you're using some tactics, some tech, some tools that are from the automotive industry, and how they are transferred, how your team is transferring them into the vacation rental industry. Would you explain that to us?
Yes, absolutely. So we're backed by this company called Advance, and it's a 100-year-old private media company. It's the largest global private media company in the world. And back in the day, newspapers and magazines were the sole source of advertising. That's how you got visibility, right? So let's call them experts at visibility. And so when this move from analog to digital happened, Advance and Advance Local were let's get a team, basically an innovation team together, to say, how do we move from analog to digital? How do we optimize this ad spend and this get visibility, right? So they started working on that, and they started working, and this was in the age of Auto Trader, Cars.com situation, where basically all the ads had moved from newspapers to Auto Trader, and you're a local car dealer, and you have to pay Auto Trader $50,000 a month to get visibility on your inventory so that people come to your lot and buy your vehicles, right? Functionally, that's what they did. And they said, hey, we have a bunch of data here. Let's use that to get targeted ads in front of people who are looking, once they know they want a white 4Runner with this specific package, let's get an ad in front of them where they are, right? So that's what they did. And so, if you've ever done car searches where you're like actively looking for a vehicle and you've kind of narrowed it down to what you want, and then you go on social media and you see, or you go on Google and you see an ad and it's for the vehicle you want, and it is the exact vehicle you want, or the exact vehicle with like all the amenities that you were looking for, and it's 7 miles down the street. You're going to click on that, you're going to go to the website, and then you're going to go drive over there and look at that vehicle, right? That's the goal. That ad, and the automating that ad creation and automating using the data to create that as the inventory changes, and kind of flexing it based on demand. So that's the other thing of like getting more eyes on properties that need, I'm going to say vehicles that are harder to sell, maybe, that need a little bit more of a push, and kind of adjusting that. Like really, we spent probably 18 months taking that software that targets those people who are looking for those vehicles and adjusting that for the vacation rental space. It's a really fun project we worked through.
How did you partner up with those guys? So you said, I think you're the founder and you started this thing, but you just dropped a little nugget that you partnered with them, or they power you, or like, what did that look like for you? Did you go fundraise capital?
They actually looked at this, and they had started it a little bit. They were like, we need somebody who knows vacation rentals and short-term rentals well. So they found me and they recruited me for this.
My background, I actually I started doing sales in the automotive industry. I started doing car sales. And so I spent a long time doing it. And like, I was just looking at some statistics as you were talking, and the U.S. automotive industry spends over $10 billion a year on digital advertising. And so they spend a ridiculous amount of money on buying digital ad space. And I'm going to guess that aside from Airbnb and VRBO, which they do spend some serious ad dollars, I would guess that it's marginally nothing spent on direct booking advertising in the vacation rental industry. And so when you talk to operators, how many of them, if any of them, are even doing anything like this? Or are they just solely relying on Airbnb, VRBO, OTAs to drive all their bookings?
That is, again, very astute question. Yeah, because like I'll say just on automotive, really like Catalyst IQ really just had to say, hey, you're already spending this money, we'll spend it more effectively, right? And we'll report back on that. And in the vacation rental space, people aren't doing it. And if they are doing it, they're doing it manually. And it's exhausting. They don't have enough time, and they're building custom audiences manually, like based on newsletters and that type of thing. So people are not using paid social, and they're not using like even Google a lot for individual property ads and targeting of this property needs this many eyes, so let's get it out there. Because when you think about this, we have a client, we created 749 ads for them, right? Individual property ads, and they're switching out which ones are going based on which people need them and what does that demand look like. So you can't do that manually. So there's no agency doing this, honestly. Like you maybe can get like, oh, this is a new property and get some eyeballs on it. But if anybody goes to their marketing agency and says, hey, I'd like you to make 45 different ads for these individual properties in marketing, and it's going to change next month, right? It's going to take them 2 weeks just to build those ads. So like, how do you and so that was why the automation is such a big deal of like, we already have your photos, we already have your content. We are going to make sure that we can optimize what that looks like, and we're going to work with Meta to make sure they can help do that, right? So we basically prime the data and get it clean for Meta, and then Meta takes it and runs with it. And we just keep reinforcing that as Meta changes their how they operate.
Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, so I get it. Many other industries, people are already advertising, and this is a unique one where most people are not advertising. And so it's that conversation of like, okay, this is the first time you're doing this. You've relied on this other source for all of your bookings. Now it's time to get some of your bookings on your own. Is that oftentimes a conversation out of desperation? Is that when people are like usually not doing well, or what? When do people normally tend to find you? Because what I'm thinking is just from what I see through social media, which is I do see a lot of people that are like, hey, Airbnb is slowing down, so now I need to start talking about direct booking. But I feel like that's a little too late. But I'd love to hear like what your experience has been and when people are coming to you, when they find the most success. Should they start this as a strategy right on day one when they launch? What does that look like?
One, I'm going to say what I'm sure you've heard a million times. Everybody should have a diversified booking strategy, which is don't rely on any one thing. If one thing falls out on your strategy, you still survive as a business, right? Everybody needs to prepare for that. And I'm also going to say the second side of it, bringing in a new distribution strategy takes probably 6 months to ramp up and see results and to understand that sustainability, right? Like the effects start happening early, but it takes a minute to measure, and then it takes a minute to adjust the rest of your strategy to account for this change in demand, right? To account for here's when your bookings are coming in. And so to shift the rest of your business around to accommodate this new change. So start early, start often. The difference in results that I see from established companies that have worked on their website and worked on their website strategy and have made sure that they are presentable to that people can find their properties and that they want to book them outside of Airbnb and outside of cost. That stuff takes years, right? But the people and the results that I see from those companies, they get 10x the results of the people who are just getting started and have a website that people have to like stumble through, essentially.
For sure.
So start now for your website for direct bookings and like be patient. If you're at the desperation stage, you probably don't have the money or the time to invest in this stuff. So it's already, I hate to say it's already too late, but because it's never too late, but it's just start now before you have to.
I'm sure those successes with time start to compound on each other, right? And then you have an ad that does really, really well. You get bookings, you get better reviews, you get more repeat clients. Like, yeah, I get it. And so the first mile is the hardest. The next couple miles are a little easier, and just kind of, it's like that snowball. It rolls downhill for you. So cool. It's been really fun talking about some of the direct booking strategies you guys are using. What are your thoughts on the future? Where's the STR industry going? And I know there's so much noise out there, but we always try to kind of sift through it and figure out what's real, what's tangible. What are your thoughts on where we go from here? What, just as a broad overview of the industry?
I think that like authenticity, right? Hospitality is one of the things we really haven't talked about that here. We are a hospitality industry. People go on trips because they remember the experience, right? And at the end of the day, you can't automate somebody's feelings on a experience. You can't there's like everybody has this question about AI, like how do we make this easy and hands off and what do we do? And there's a bunch of things you can automate and you absolutely should, but it's so that your team can focus on providing an experience for these guests. And that's so important that the guest experience is focused and it's there. The expectations of what a vacation rental stay should look like, it's going to go up. It's substantially, right? So expectations are going up. If you can't keep up with those expectations, you're going to have to keep dropping price, which then makes your business unsustainable, right? So you have to differentiate, you have to provide that experience, and you have to build processes so that it's consistent, right? And the technology helps build consistency. And that's like, so understanding that balance of using technology to build consistency so that you can focus on that hospitality experience for the people who stay at your properties every single time. So I do think people are going to get more curated. I think the number of properties you have does not always equal the amount of revenue you make, right? So start focusing on how much money you make per property, how much profit you make per property. How do you optimize that? And how do you make sure that feedback of, when AI looks at your website for search results, it's seeing authenticity and it's seeing that you are an expert in the marketplace and that other people are speaking well of you. That's going to get you front and center. And that's going to start competing with, your standard, just slap it up on Airbnb and people will find you situation where people work.
Okay, we can't let that slide because you brought up a super good point, which is how do we optimize for LLMs? How do we optimize for search with AI tools? because everybody's using it. It's replacing Google. We go to ChatGPT, we go to Grok, we go to whatever tool we use, and it helps us plan trips and it helps us figure out who to do business with. And in my day-to-day business, we get deals all the time from it where someone says, hey, my AI bot told me that you're the person I need to talk to. And that's obviously taken years and years and years of taking up a lot of space on the internet and providing a lot of value. But do you think that that's the future? Do we start to see way more bookings directly to people's direct booking sites because they're being found through AI?
Yes, absolutely. So I think everything we've talked about is kind of built towards this, is one of the things that I would say. AI does not like to give AI search results back, right? It kind of gets a little incestuous is the term that I use. So you want to make sure that your website's authentic, right? You also want to make sure that it's user-friendly. So, think about this, like start to think about what is that guest experience when somebody lands on your website, when they go through the search results, when they look at the properties. Is it easy to find? Are your photos well tagged? Can they describe everything? Are they where they need to be? Is it reasonable? Like, can you see feedback from other people? And then the other thing that's secondary, I would say, is have you established yourself as a local market expert of if you're going to go stay in your market with, and stay in a property, do I need to know that you know where to go and what to do and where to stay? And again, not AI, right? Like go ask AI, say, hey, what would it take to recommend, like get some prompts together. I should come up with prompts. This is a blog post. I'm going to go do it now. Prompts of like how to make my website more like responsive. How to make my website the leading expert of going on a vacation at Cannon Beach or wherever it is that you're going, wherever you are. Like, how do you do that? What should you do? How should you tweak that? Make all of them score your website and give you recommendations, and then go in and do it, right? There's not shortcuts on that stuff. It takes time. We all want a shortcut in this stuff, and like, honestly, the people who do it and put in the work, they see the results.
I love the idea around asking AI what AI needs in order to find you, which is just a crazy, crazy world we live in. I wish it worked like that when I asked my wife what she wanted for dinner, but it does not. And the nice thing
she
about
just
AI,
doesn't want to decide anymore. That's all.
The nice thing is AI is happy to make a decision and it will tell you, and you're right. When you write that blog post, let us know. We'll drop it in the show notes because that would be super important for people to be able to grab, copy, and paste that prompt. So cool. Great to chat with you, Amber. Come back on anytime. It was great to connect with you. How can people find you? What's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, you can go to bookingscloud.com, or my email address is aknight, KNIGHT, at bookingscloud.com, and would love to chat with you.
Cool. I will drop your information in the show notes. I'll probably drop your social media handles if you want us to as well. So guys, if you're looking for Amber, all that information is in the show notes. Reach out to her and her company. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably doing cool stuff with your short-term rental as well, which will just compound the success that you have through some direct booking and marketing strategies. Always fun to have you on the channel. Thanks, Amber. Keep crushing it. And guys, if you're listening in, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Check us out next Monday for another Monday Market Data Report. And thank you for being the best part of the STR Investing Podcast.